John Cleese is 36. He's married to Connie Booth, who wrote Fawlty Towers with him. They live in West London. He's on his way home for lunch.
I used to do a great routine on tube trains on my own. You used to just stand there staring out of the window, and in the right hand, it was from a sketch, you used to do this kind of thing. You see, and then you turn and you look at somebody you've pre-picked, and they're always absolutely fixed on you like that. And then you look, and they look away and try not to look again. And the hand comes up. And the moment that you see their head turn, you go, look at them again. You say, well, if I do that now, somebody just say, oh, it's that bloke on the television thinking he's so bloody funny, you know.
The strange thing about John is that the first impression you get, and indeed for some time when you know him, he seems like a very decent, quiet, reserved, well-bred, diffident, easily embarrassed English gentleman. And it's a long time before you realise that rich and insane fantasy life that lurks behind the hollow eyes.
You know, when news programmes or documentary programmes run short and they need 3 minutes, they will show a factory chimney being blown up. And it collapses like that. And there is something funny and at the same time terrible about it happening. And we see Cleese beginning in the pinstripe suit and the moustache, well-groomed, a very ordered man, ex-military man, set up a hotel or whatever. We then see him broken to pieces and left in ruins. And that in itself is both funny and really rather pathetic.
He has got a very good mind indeed. The one thing he doesn't have, he doesn't stick to things. The amount of times he started to learn Arabic or Chinese or the philosophy of doormats or whatever, the first 30 pages of a book are always well read and he reads them very conscientiously. And this is rather true of driving. The amount of times he's had driving lessons and driving tests, I don't know.
Cleese was born in Weston-super-Mare. His father sold insurance. At school, he grew very tall. By the age of 10, he was 5 feet 8 inches, and he realised then his talent to amuse.
I think I've been a very unpopular school kid because I've been shy, awkward, not a good mixer. And then I think when I was about 10 or 11 in Mr. Sanger Davis's class, I discovered I could make funny remarks. And many thanks to him for allowing me to make them.
John, I think, would admit to being very backward emotionally when he arrived at Cambridge. He was an only child, and in many ways he appeared like a sort of rather elder statesman, but in other ways was very backward. He was, as I say, an only child and being very well protected. And somebody introduced him to a girl, which he studied, very, you know, this strange creature, but in no time at all he caught up.
Cleese read law. It was something of a family tradition. He graduated with a good degree and a place at a top city firm of solicitors. But he rejected it.
I actually enjoyed it for the first couple of years, but the third year, when we got down to evidence and real property and equity and stuff like that, oh, my God, it was dull. I mean, it was frightening. So I was up and off.
But I think a running gag is a good idea.
Yeah, well, we thought of the Gerald Ford idea. Falling over. The idea is that Ford keeps coming on and just falls over in different ways. I mean,
it could be funny the first time.
Yeah, but the thing is that you've got to vary it. So, so the second time he comes on with skis or something.
The Footlights Club, a Cambridge institution that's diverted many promising students away from the careers their parents had intended into the realms of entertainment. But Cleese's first attempt to join was abortive.
They said, oh, we'd like to join the Footlights. Well, do you dance? And I said, no. And they said, oh, you sing then? I thought, Footlights, singing, dancing, so I said, no. They said, well, what do you do? And I said, well, I'm completely embarrassed. I said, I'd try and make people laugh. And it sounded so foolish.
He was eventually admitted and got into the cast of the most successful Footlights revue ever, Cambridge Circus, which went to the West End and then to Broadway.
I know, it's terrible, isn't it? I mean, the only thing I have to show, 3 years education at Cambridge, is a 12-minute court sketch.
Cleese entered the BBC as a writer in radio on the strength of his work in Footlights.
I was given a Terry Scott and Brian Ricks script and was asked to take some of the jokes out, which is a lovely first job for a comedy writer.
The BBC let him go to Broadway with Cambridge Circus, and there he got the vital break that enabled him to emerge from the back rooms of radio into the limelight of television. It came from David Frost.
One day it was, hello. I said, oh, hello, David. He said, listen, when you came back to England? I said, Christmas. He said, oh, good. Do you want to be in a television series? So I said, yes, please. He said, all right, speak to you about it. Oops, got to go. Bye. And so I was in the Frost Report.
I think it was really that quality of benevolent sadism in his work, really, you know, in the sense that his humour can be immensely cruel, and the nice thing is that he means it.
I think I do not perceive myself as such, sitting inside this strange citadel that is Cleese, but I suspect everyone else thinks I'm up to there in it, yeah. I mean, I'm stuck with a newsreader-style voice, if you see what I mean. And I don't know, there's something ex-pubscure about me, which is unfortunate now, I can't really escape from.
The 48 show made John Cleese well known in television, but it was Monty Python that permitted him to give full rein to his talent and made him a star. It was a role he was diffident about playing. He was far removed from the traditional comedy performer who craved such celebrity.
I don't know how much my feelings show, but I can feel exceptionally sour when people shout out, "Oi! Give us your funny walk then!" You know, and everyone turns and looks, you know. Sort of 8:15 when you're just walking down the road wanting to be quiet, you know. And I overreact, and I think it's something because I feel it's undignified. When I was 16, everyone told me, "John, the thing to do is to get a good qualification. You go in an accountant's office now, by the time you're 37, you'll have several letters after your name, you know, you'll be able to get married." It was sort of that kind of feeling. Fine, it's one type of life, but it was laid down to me, you know, as a sort of golden pathway leading up to the ACA, you know. And the only stuff that we've ever done there has been, I've had a feeling of, you know, let's warn the kids, you know, that it's not an exciting life, you know. I mean, if that's what you want, fine. So I mean, I always had a feeling that we were doing a tiny bit of crusading then. I think there's something manic in me. Yes, there's something manic somewhere in me. And I think it's something to do with being trapped in a kind of a shell of lower middle class, and this is lower middle class, reasonableness and politeness. And sometimes I get very angry and I find it frightfully difficult to be angry. And I think anger in particular, but I also, people talk to me at parties sometimes, you know, and they really do talk at me. And I have fantasies about picking things up, you know, cheese dips, you know. But I've never had the courage to do it. I could do it on stage. You know, Basil Fawlty did it.
In polite society, he would be the last person to do anything extreme or farouche or louche in the way of gesture. He'd always be well controlled, and therefore it's this that comes out with this sort of insane figure hitting himself on the head, you know, and the sort of things that he'd never dream of doing, except in this sort of fantasy situation he builds and creates and exploits.
I have a feeling that situations could arise when I would almost go as berserk as Basil. Oh, really? Yeah, really.
For us, it was a release because somehow I think, too, in the relationship of Sybil and Basil, we were able to get out a lot of our frustrations with each other through those characters. And it was a terrific time. It was really good. It was kind of like therapy.
They plan to write another series of 40 Towers, but at present, Cleese spends his days working on a history book.
I love reading a little bit of history here and there, and the sort of facts that amuse me are not, as it were, Clause 27 of the Magna Carta, but the fact that evidently you could smell a crusading army 7 miles away, you know, which makes you wonder what it was like to be in the middle of it.
His success has been considerable, but it has not been gained without pain.
He's very, very self-critical, over-critical of himself. He should be kinder to himself, I think. He gives himself a very hard time. I think he does self-analyse a lot, and I think we would disagree here. I think he self-analyses too much.
I think most of the people working in comedy seem to have depressions. Whether they're any better or worse than people in other jobs, I'm not sure, but I suspect there's something about the depressive temperament that seems to produce comics.